All right, if you're wondering what it takes to become a heavy hitting mix engineer but don't know where to start, today's guest made that journey. From Wyoming, Ohio to Los Angeles, working on releases for BTS, Usher, Timbaland, Nia, and Lupe Fiasco, just to name a few. He's not just a legend on paper, he's somebody who's deeply respected by his peers for his generosity, wisdom, and relentless passion for the craft. He also happens to be the perfect guest for this podcast, a friend, mentor, and a role model who's help guide me through this crazy music industry. Welcome to the Loud AF Club, the podcast where we cut through the noise and go straight to the source. I'm your host, mastering engineer Nicholas Di Lorenzo. Bob, thank you so much for being here. I'm
Thank
genuinely
you, man.
excited to learn from your journey.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Nobody said Wyoming, Ohio in a long time. They usually just say Cincinnati. So that was fun.
No, but you know why? Eric. That's the
Eric,
first time I
okay.
met you. You two, where are you guys from? You guys are so nice. As in, like, when you go to LA, everybody's like, how do I put it? They're all excitable and heated up and got riz and raz, and you guys are just so chill and kind.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys aren't from here, nah, Ohio. So I'm like, no, I'm including that. You got so many awesome credits to your name, but in addition to that, that's like surface layer stuff, because
uh,
beneath that, it's like you're respected amongst your peers, and you see that in reality. But also it's that's not the only dimension to what you're doing. You've got this whole history of before you started working on bigger records, and I'm really curious to where that transition happened, because correct me if I'm wrong, and you can adjust this the details and the facts here. You started in Ohio with Eric at a studio somewhere. That's as
not
much
with
as I've
Eric.
got. Not
So I
with
met
Eric. Okay.
Eric. I met Eric later after college. I went to Berkeley College of Music, and when I left Berkeley, I decided to go to Nashville because the word was that there was more tracking going on in Nashville than LA. So, and I really love tracking and microphones and all that. So I went to Nashville for 3 years, 2 or 3 years, or I don't know how long. And that's where I met Eric. He was going to school, and a mutual Berkeley friend of ours lived there. And that guy went to high school with Eric. So we met up, and I think it was like a bar or pizza place or something. And Eric and I hit it off, and we're nerds. Like, just I'm out of school, he's in school, and we're like talking about microphones and consoles and stuff. Like, it's just fresh on our mind. Like, I was just out of school, so he and I hit it off, became friends, and he did his college career, and I got him an internship at one of the studios I was working at, and so that's kind of how Eric and I met. But I started in Ohio as a musician. So started on saxophone, and then added guitar, and then bass, and then drums, and then keyboards. And by the time I was in late high school, I was playing, five instruments, like at equal level of talent, because I never did my homework. I just practiced instruments. But I also did like sound at church and stuff, and then I got an internship at two studios in downtown Cincinnati and cut my teeth there, learned the consoles and some of the microphones I'd never heard of at that point, like Neumann's and the expensive stuff. And then I went to Berkeley, and I went for production and engineering and electric bass. So I kind of did those two things at my Berkeley career. And then after that, went to Nashville. And
Yeah.
after 3 years in Nashville and learning that whole world, I went to Charlotte, North Carolina for like 8 months and kind of got my bearings, saved up some money to move out here to LA, worked with James Brown doing some tracking and stuff, and then came out here 2001, 9/11 is when I left. So that was an exciting time. And
Okay.
got here to LA, and then the rest is, just growing up in the LA engineering, audio, music world.
Yeah. I'm curious. Are you a good tracking engineer?
Always trying to come in.
That's all right.
Go ahead.
You there? Are
Yep.
you a good tracking engineer?
I'm really good. really good.
Really good. Okay.
I so at Berkeley, I really took advantage of Berkeley. So Berkeley has this thing, or they used to at least, called practice time, where you can wait in line in the morning with your college ID and book out 2 hours in the studio. And I decided to get a job at that office so that I could have keys to all the studios. So I got extra practice time that the other students didn't really get. People go home for Thanksgiving and I would stay and have like 48 hours of practice time, stuff like that. So I really abused the Berkeley practice time thing and got as much time as possible. So I'm doing stuff like miking pianos with RE20s and putting four microphones on a vocal and panning them left to right and realizing that was a dumb idea. And I did everything I could think of with a microphone in those 3.5, 4 years, and really got good at mic technique. And then I went to Nashville, where all the engineers are great tracking guys, and I learned all their secrets. And I just kind of was a sponge and just put it all in my brain. So, and then of course owning Echo Bar with my buddy Eric Rikers, we had our own tracking room, and then of course I had all the instruments, drums and guitar amps and stuff. So I got a lot more practice there. So the key to me learning was not waiting on musicians or a band or some guitar player at Berkeley to come around and let me record them. Because I was a musician, I just put in as much recording time as possible. So I really learned a lot about tracking, and I might be a little rusty since mostly I mix now, but definitely got a lot of mic technique skills under my belt in the earlier years.
Yeah. And I didn't ask that to be cheeky or anything. The reason
Mm,
why is because um my career I've lived predominantly in the box except for like analog mastering chains.
mm,
And all my interaction is with pre-recorded material, so I don't have to deal with musicians, I don't have to deal with anybody outside of
yeah.
that scope. So when I started interning at a studio that was doing recording and having to work sessions doing tracking, I didn't connect with it. Like, I found it really difficult. Like, I understood the
Mm,
technology super well. I understood the acoustics, and as a drummer, I really knew how to mic a drum kit really well. But as a tracking engineer, I was trash because I just couldn't, in a session, manage musicians and the technical side. Like, I really struggled with
got
that.
you.
So I was like, if somebody's really passionate, actually, maybe what would be the advice you would have given me when I was starting out? As in going, Nick, you're really passionate about mics, you're really passionate about recording. This is what you need to do to make sure you can operate in the studio at a good level and enjoy it.
Well, I think it's practice, repetition, watching someone else do their thing on a high level. I was a musician. I had about four or five bands in high school, and we were always trying to record ourselves. So going through those pains of like, oh, what's a DI box? Why do we need a DI box? And then, oh, this cable's not as good as that cable. I didn't know there was a difference. And all these things that you go through and feedbacking the mixer and like just
Yeah,
going through those growing pains of being a musician trying to record ourselves in the 90s. I started to learn the processes, and it's all about, in the tracking world, it's all about solving problems, which is quite literally the definition of engineering. And just being able to think on your feet when something isn't working, making something else work to fix that, or finding another way. And I had so much time doing that. I think that was the key, that once I was in the studio, where everything does work because you're at a high level studio and only occasionally things break or you're missing something, it made it a lot easier. So then you get to watch the more seasoned engineers do their thing, and you can focus on, wow, why did he angle the mic like that? And then during lunch break, you pull him aside and ask him, and then you try it the next time you're recording, and just collecting all that stuff. And then the musician side of it, there's a lot of psychology, especially with bands rather than solo artists. There's a lot of psychology in keeping the vibe good in the studio and alleviating problems before they happen, dealing with the different members, and sometimes there's just going to be a clash or a fight or an argument amongst the band members, and you just got to step away from it because you don't have anything to do with it. But um, like learning people and their personalities and what makes them happy in the studio, what makes them comfortable, what kind of vibe in the vocal booth do we need so the singer can forget about the technical side and just get musical and not the lighting, and do they need candles, how's the temperature, how are the headphones, what does the headphone mix sound like, and you just get these long lists, to-do lists of things you got to check off in the studio, and it's really hard at first to remember all that stuff, and you forget something and something bad happens and you got to fix it on the spot. But being quick at fixing problems or jumping on them, people always feel better about that when there's an issue and you're really on it. They really like that. So eventually that list just becomes second nature, and it's like breathing. It's like you got to set up the headphone mix a certain way, and you got to make sure the cables are taped down on the floor so people aren't tripping. So all that stuff just becomes what you do, and it's a
Yeah.
lot less pressure.
Yeah. Interesting. And that's all. And with tracking, obviously, that's all in person, face to face
Yeah.
interactions.
I think that's why people like mixing a lot, because they get to be alone and screw up by themselves and then fix it
Yeah.
without being scrutinized. That's why people used to tell me I had a lot of guts for mixing live on camera, because I'm
Uh,
making whatever mistakes in front of people, but you just power through them and make it look like not a mistake.
yeah,
So,
like you're literally doing a performance. If it's a
right.
bung note, hit the bung note twice on the repeat. Um,
There you go.
the reason why I flag that is because I'm not alone in this. I know I'm not alone in this. And if you are, you're a unicorn. But whenever I send a mix or a master or send a file to a client, it doesn't matter how well I've smashed it out of the park, and I know I've smashed it out of the park, there's even just 0.5% of an itch on the back of my head thinking, what if they don't like it? How do I manage that
Of course.
feedback?
Of course. Like, I think we all have that. I mean, I'm definitely with you on that. Like, there's an insecurity, and the reason there's an insecurity is because it's not a formula of an equation that you just enter the numbers and you're done. It's art.
Okay.
you
Yep.
know. So I've done mixes that I've played for other people and they absolutely loved them. My engineer friends, and if anyone's going to scrutinize, it's going to be another engineer. They're going to be like, "Oh, that hi hat seems really harsh," you know. So I send my mix to them, and they love it, and then I hear back from the client, and they don't love it. So that happens because of the the variances in mixing. It's in the millions of the different ways you can do stuff. The different combinations of having the piano louder than they were used to it on their rough, having the vocal with more reverb, and they're not used to that, so now they dislike it. And then on top of that, add in the fact that a lot of artists aren't technical, so they may not know why they don't like something. They just don't like it because it's different, and that's why the whole
Mm.
demoitis rough mix importance thing came about, where mix engineers now, like most of us, always ask for a rough because we don't want to stray too far from the vibe that they had. And sometimes you can't win. Sometimes you just do the rough, but enhance it, make it a little bit better, and there's still something they don't like, and you gotta learn that artist, learn their personality, learn their jargon, because every artist talks different, and find out that, oh, it's the de-esser they don't like. They want less de-essing, and I maybe did a
Yeah.
little too much. And then you back off that one thing, and they're happy. And then other artists, it's like, well, I can't figure out what you mean, so come to the house, sit with me, let's go through it until you're happy.
Yeah. And
So
that's why I brought it up, because I'm like, when people are in session, it's instant feedback. You know
yeah,
when they like a take. You know when they like the way the kick's sitting, or you've comped a particular vocal and it's just hitting right. So it makes it easy. Whereas when it's on email, it's like a black box. It's like you send it into the abyss, and
yeah.
if yeah, it's just
And
like playing
some
tap slot
artists
on the way back.
some artists love a lot of things about what you gave them, but they don't mention those positive things. They only mention the things they don't like. So it kind
Yep.
of hits you a little bit like, oh no, you know?
I know, I know.
Yeah,
And that's interesting. And it's just such a different thing to tracking because in tracking, you know when somebody's done a good take straight
right,
away. It's like it's
right.
instant and it's
But and
locked
that's
in and
also that's a lot more on the artist. As long as we're not screwing up the button
yeah,
pushing, we're off the hook, you know? In the
yeah,
mixing world, they're painting, but we're holding the paintbrush,
yeah.
you
It's
know?
like
Right.
awesome, man, awesome. Well, we'll get back to like the crux of me trying to understand why you actually why what was the moment where you went from, so you said you were in North Carolina for 8 months.
Right. I worked.
Was that a strategic move to migrate across
No,
to LA?
there was at one point I just wanted to go to LA for a few reasons. One, the city of Nashville in the early 2000s, late 90s was very limited in everything. I mean, talking about from restaurants, nightclubs to nightlife, anything like that, you know. And it was just felt very isolated. Like you have your sessions, your work, and that's all you have. It's you go home and you're just in your apartment. Like you're not meeting people. I was single. I'm not meeting any girls, you know, that kind of thing. So, and then I got tired of the music as well. It was like either country or Christian music, which Christian music had a lot more variety of genres, but they only sold like 10,000 copies, and that was like a hit to them at that point, you know, except for a
Yep.
few like Michael W. Smith and a few super high level Christian artists sold more. But for a lot of the artists, if you sold 10, 15,000 copies, it was successful in the Christian world. And I wanted more. I just wanted to work on more genres, more stuff. And then I had a bunch of friends in LA, so I decided I wanted to go to LA. But at that time, Nashville had this weird lull in work. Like I had friends driving all the way to Arizona to mix two records because they just didn't have any work. You know, like it was a weird. It was I think it was the summer of 2000 or 19 or 99 or something, and I was running out of money really quick. So I was on a month to month lease on my apartment. I canceled it. Just told my parents I'm coming to stay for a while, and I saved up some money there in North Carolina. Got in with the studio. Got to work with James Brown, you know, the famous funk
Yep.
master, and that was a lot of fun. And then Eric was at Middle Tennessee State University finishing up his engineering degree, and he was graduating. And we had a friend that was leaving Nashville to go to California, and Eric and I were just kind of like, "Yeah, we want to do that too. Let's follow him." And so when he graduated and packed up, I met him. It happened to be September 11th, and we were on the road for like 5 days driving out to California in 2001. So,
Wow. So
yeah.
you land in LA or you drive into LA. Um, what was the trajectory from? Because up until that point, been working as a tracking engineer. You've been doing some live mixing as well, and I would assume a bit of mixing as well.
Not a lot of mixing. I
Not a
mean,
lot of mixing.
in
So
Nashville, most of my work was assisting and a little bit of tracking. And then I think I had like two pro mixes um, until I met James Brown, and then I did a little bit for him, and then I came out here.
then how did you transition from? Because I'm assuming, like it is now, as a mixing engineer, it's dog eat dog. You got to find your own meals, so to speak.
Yeah.
You got to have the right connection. You got to be. People want to have you on the record mixing. How do you build up that from scratch? Basically, moving to a new city. Like, was it abundant and open, or was it something that you had to scrap for?
No, I definitely had to scrap for it, but this was a different time, so this isn't advice, or maybe a little bit will be advice, but when I came out here, I just declared myself an engineer, not an assistant. I just decided I'm not going to get a job at a studio because I'll be interning for the first year and a half, basically starting over. and
Mm.
I didn't feel like doing that. Like I felt like I already had done so much assisting, and it might have been a good path to do, but I just declared myself an independent engineer slash mixer and came out here. And I had a little bit of money saved, and it was a very slow start. And I met a couple people, met a guy that worked out of New York, so I ended up flying to New York to work for a lot of the time. And I was spending more time in New York than I was in LA just to have something to work on and make some money, you know. And then I had another friend that had his own studio and he was a producer, so I started working with him and he paid me enough to get by so that I would keep showing up and did a lot of work with him. And then probably 2002 or 3, I met Ron Feemster, who also goes by Nephew, and he is a big R&B hip hop producer and some pop as well. But I met him at the start of his career after he had spent probably 2 years with Dr. Dre as a in-house keyboard player and slash producer, and he was kind of going out on his own. And the way the story goes, he flew home for Christmas, like a lot of us do, to visit our families, which was North Carolina. And my parents also lived in North Carolina, about maybe a half hour from him. He books the studio that I'd worked in with James Brown, and they call me and say, "Hey, we want you to do this session. Can you extend your Christmas vacation, stay here, work with this guy?" Because he's one of Eminem's producers, and they're all nervous about having a big Hollywood producer in their studio. And so I say yes. I meet the guy. Turns out Ron and I live down the street from each other out here in LA. So we worked that whole week. We really hit it off. We both come back from Christmas break. I go over to his house, and he has a very little production setup, like nothing you need an engineer to help you with. It's just like a personal production setup. But he just got paid for his work on Eminem and 50 Cent. So he did part of it in the club. So he's got all this money. We go to Guitar Center for 12 hours and we just buy an entire studio. I just tell him everything we need for the ultimate production setup, from the Pro Tools rig, speakers. He bought a ton of keyboards and MPC and all this stuff. It was like Christmas. So we just go crazy, and we start working together every day. I go to his house, drive to his house. He put me on salary. He's making productions. I'm engineering them and rough mixing them, and we're just turning in beats to our manager of the production team. And man, I think in 5 years we had one hard drive that had all the rough mixes of all the beats, and I think by the end we had done like 1,500 beats and like another few hundred songs, full songs. And as well, we had worked with Jay-Z, Michael Jackson, Neo, Mario, Brandy, all these artists. And yeah, it was a great time. I think if I was going to give a young engineer advice, is latching onto a producer that's hot, someone that's getting gigs, because if they get gigs and they have someone that helps them get gigs, maybe a manager, or they're in with a label, all you got to do is do great work for them and they'll keep you around and you'll get the same credits they're getting. And that's how I built my name, was getting all those credits with Nephew. And then once that ended, after like 5 years or so, and I went out on my own, I had stuff that I could rattle off to people. They're like, "Oh, you want to mix this? What have you done?" And then I can rattle off all these names, and they know the records I'm talking about. And then next thing you know, I'm mixing Usher for Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, and the Avila Brothers, and Macy Gray, and all these other projects. And um, so that's what I recommend to engineers, is work with producers and form relationships and friendships and be their go-to guy. So if you're great at vocal tuning and tracking, you'll be their guy for that. So,
Yeah.
I also played guitar and bass on a lot of Nephew's productions, so I was valuable in that. So anything you can do to be valuable to someone that's talented, and always work with someone better than you, someone that has more talent than you, and you'll learn the most.
And you didn't necessarily go seeking out that relationship. That was just something serendipitous that happened. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I happened to work for Reflection Studios when I lived in North Carolina for those 8 months.
yeah,
I spent a lot of time there, got to know them, and then I was already in LA. I was done with that job.
yeah,
Nephew books Reflections. I happened to be in town for Christmas, and they call me and say, "Hey, can you work with this guy? He's an LA guy too." And I don't know if they just didn't trust the engineers they had on staff or whatever, but they
yeah,
asked me to do it,
yeah.
and I formed a relationship that set the next 5 years in motion for me, you know.
If uh, whilst those 5 years are happening, do you have other things going on at the same time, or was your energy just exclusively there?
I was pretty much just all in with the nephew situation. I was this tracking guy. I played a little bit of guitar and bass on his stuff,
Yeah.
and I was kind of on call. I mean, we would do most. I won't say I won't do it by days, but by a week, we would probably do about 30 beats per week, and then
Okay.
other times we would book out studios in LA and have artists come through. So we'd stack up the beats, get ourselves, 70, 80 beats, and then go in the studio with an artist and let them pick some and start writing to, or we'd have songwriting sessions, bring in writers and let them write to a bunch of them. And then our manager would try to pitch those songs or those beats to rappers and singers and labels. And so we were just kind of like a factory. Like they handled the
Mm.
business, we handled the creative, and we just got records and beats done all the time. So if we weren't making beats, we are in the studio tracking an artist on those beats, and then at some point mixing them. And so that was kind of, you know, 80% of my focus. Like I really wasn't mixing other projects for other people or tracking for other people. Like that was very rare because I just didn't have the time.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's really cool because one of my questions were I was going to ask, which I don't sort of have to ask now, was like, was there a point where you're like, I'm in the game, like it's on time, like it's no longer freelance scrapping, so to speak, as in trying to find the next gig so the lights stay on. Like, was there a moment where like,
Yeah,
damn, I'm in it, like I'm in the thick of it now?
for sure. I mean, one of our early gigs was with Jay-Z, and we recorded a song called Brooklyn Anthem. And at that point, I kind of knew it's like, okay, so nephew is legit, and he has, he already his resume in my mind to me, convincing me was already 50 Cent and Eminem, and then I actually go to a session where I'm the engineer for him, and it happens to be Jay Z. So at that point, I'm like, okay, so if I just stick this out and work with nephew and enjoy the situation, we're gonna be working with all these artists. So that's probably when I realized like this is we're doing legit stuff here.
Yeah. Do you think, and this is like a perception thing. A lot of people have of engineers with credits, or let's say they got plaques or Grammys or whatnot. There's this perception that they're more skilled or talented than engineers without them. Do you feel like any of the accolades you got during that time made you inherently a better engineer, or it was just a byproduct of the work you were putting in?
It's just a byproduct of the
Yeah,
work. Yeah. The experience and working during the time I did, where basically now engineers don't come up the traditional way. They don't go through a big studio. They kind of are self-taught or YouTube taught, and they're learning in the box, and then they get in the studio and they kind of fumble their way through tracking until they're good. And then maybe they watched seasoned engineers on videos on what they're doing, so they learned some of the correct stuff. But coming up the way I did, where nobody could do anything in the control room until I was there. They couldn't even play music. Not, I mean, back then in the days of CDs, like people couldn't even put a CD on unless I went to the SSL and selected the external for the CD player and set the volume, and then they could see the volume knob that I turned and they knew how to turn that up and down, but they couldn't do anything else. They couldn't record themselves. Now everybody can record themselves, even singers that aren't engineers, you know? So it was a very different way to come up through the traditional studios and learning and paying your dues, being an unpaid intern at first and sweeping floors and then, learning how to walk through an orchestral session without stepping on a $20,000 cello and breaking it, like there's so much to learn and in the big studio world you were just thrown into it as an intern and they place restrictions on you until you can be trusted. Like you can't use the board in the control room, until you know how to use it, that kind of stuff. So um, it's very different than nowadays. And
Yeah.
there's definitely engineers, even engineers with big credits, that just aren't. They're not amazing. They just know how to get stuff done, and they have a great personality, so they're liked when they're in the room. So the talent is still up and down with
Yeah.
the accolades. It just depends who they are and how they learned and what skills they have. There's guys been doing it for 20 years that still don't have amazing mixing ears, Um, so
Well, then
it's
with
varied. It's all over the place.
yeah, and then with that, um, okay, so let's say there's a gap now that obviously people getting into the game that don't have those experiences, going through an internship, going through assisting, cutting your teeth in a studio. Like I always tell the story about where I pissed off the main mastering engineer because I was just an assistant at the time, and we were punching in and out the main analog console, and it was a piano concerto, and I punched it out before the sustain pedal had been lifted off, and like that was a big no-no, and I was like,
Yeah.
that got drummed into me like really hard. So then when it came to topping and tailing, every time there's a piano and it's a sustain at the end of a track, I'm always waiting for that sustain pedal to come off. And now so many pianos are digital, I never get that sustain pedal, which kills me. Um,
Uh,
but anyway, it's such a that's a very micro lesson, and the reason why I'm framing and setting that up there is because I'm curious: are there any lessons, like valuable lessons that can't be recreated in online learning that you've taken over your time where you're like, you can't replicate it, but it's absolutely essential and necessary for you to operate the way you do that you learned during that time?
yeah, I'd say there's a ton of them, and they're all micro, like the piano sustain you just mentioned. But there's endless ones. But that doesn't mean that someone missing out on those can't be an amazing engineer.
Yeah.
Um, they're just going to be a different, less rounded engineer, and they may not want to learn how to track drums or piano or worry about the sustain pedal or how to hook up a Hammond B3 organ without blowing up the amp in the Leslie cabinet. Some people aren't interested in that, and that's fine. Like if they are satisfied learning how to vocal record and vocal edit and be all in the box, that's great. They can be more famous than any of us doing just that. And there are some guys that are like that. You don't have to have an old school background. I just appreciate my journey through that stuff, and I'm glad I know it because I just feel like I have that knowledge and I'm proud of it. And it's like if there's a situation where you know, whether you have to identify something or actually go to a studio and do something. But even mixing, I pull up a live drum kit to mix it, and I can hear all the problems and picture myself in the studio recognizing what they did wrong or right. So, I remember being in a control room and just being just like guitar player has a out of tune string, and just telling the producer engineer sitting at the console because I'm the assistant, like, oh, his B string is out of tune, and then just realizing how cocky I sounded by naming the string rather than saying, hey guys, you want him to tune before this next take, because they were about to record without tuning. I knew he was out of tune. I should have just said it like that, but instead I was like, oh, his B string's out of tune, all kind of cocky and everything. And just they were impressed that I knew that, but you know, kind of felt a certain way when I did it. But all that knowledge just helps in your journey and everything you do. It's like knowing the notes. Like when you're a tracking engineer, let's say you're recording a trumpet or something, and you know the musical parts. So when the producer tells the trumpet player, "Hey, let's go back to the top of the B section and have you do a different riff over that A chord," I actually know what the A chord is and where he's talking about. If I already see sheet music, I know where it is. All that stuff just makes me a better tracking engineer. But someone that doesn't know it is gonna figure it out and then they're gonna get it done. But it's just a different way of navigating. And I'm happy with the way I learned because I just feel good about all that musical knowledge and engineering knowledge kind of colliding.
That's awesome. That's really humbling. As in, like, yeah, yeah, you're exceptionally comfortable with your journey, with your skill set, with the pathways others take now, because there are and I'm not saying this to like gossip, quote unquote, but there are engineers who can be a bit jaded or look at the new generation and go, oh, all in the box, that's no good, or you didn't have to cut your teeth the way I did, so you don't know how. So look, hats off to
Sure.
you, because yeah, I was really really just curious about your appreciation, understanding for growing into the role of a mixing engineer, because um, yeah, it's for people starting out now. It feels like you're literally, if you're on your Instagram or Facebook feed, you're one like you're one click away from entering a video that's going to make you the next Chris Lord Algae. If you watch
Hmm.
20 minutes of a YouTube, it's like, no, it's not. Like there's like it's not gonna solve all your problems. And then I think what ends up happening is, for people starting out, they get incredibly frustrated at themselves for not being
Yeah.
quick to the mark. And
Yeah.
that's sort of why I'm sort of leaning into your experiences to go, well, what did you learn? What about it helped you? And hopefully people can, like, for my takeaway for myself is that the repetitions, the repetitions matter just as much as the experiences in those repetitions, because it's not like you go to a tennis court and you serve 100 times. It's the same court, it's the same ball, it's the same racket, whatever. Like you said earlier, every song is incredibly different. There's one of a million
Well,
different possible variations. So you're not just putting in repetitions, practicing your serve, like in the same
right.
court. Like, you're doing the same thing, but completely differently every time, and it's going to push and
Of
test
course.
those boundaries. So, man, that's little mental note, Nicholas. Write down notes after this podcast. Figure
I
out how
like
to put
to
more reps in.
I like to equate mixing to playing a guitar, learning a guitar. And there's one major difference is that with guitar, you'll learn a song or a solo or something or riff, and you'll keep playing that riff over and over again until you're a master at it or you're really good at it. With mixing, you're practicing over and over again, except the music keeps changing on you. So you have to adapt, and that's what makes mixing harder to learn, but it's also people don't realize a lot of, especially artists or producers, people that want to mix their own stuff to save money because they do so many tracks, but they don't want to invest in a mix engineer. They get frustrated because their feeling is that mixing should be something like photoshopping a photo or something,
Yeah,
or something that's less artistic. And um, they feel like they're one plugin away or one technique away from nailing it, and then all of a sudden that mixing thing is nipped in the bud, so every song is just going to be mixed perfect. Now they can get back to focusing on writing their song better, and that's not the case. It's mixing is guitar playing, and my guitar just happens to be mixing. So I keep practicing all the time. I hate how I played that guitar last year, how I mixed last year. I like what I'm doing right this second. And next
yeah,
year I'll hate what I'm doing now. And then you just evolve. You can choose to move with trends of the industry. You can choose to have your own sound or a combination, but we're always evolving, and we're always learning new things from each other and our a lot of self-discovery as well. But it's like learning an instrument. You got to keep doing it. I mean, famous guitar players still practice or jam or play. They're they don't put the guitar down until their next show. They have it in their hands every day. So that's what mixing is. That's why mix engineers exist. If artists that don't know engineering could just mix and it was just a plug-in thing, then we wouldn't exist.
Yeah,
So
that's and that's something I've always found really interesting with you is, and you got to tell me how you find the time and the energy and the dedication to it. Um, First time I met you, I showed you that Dine One parallel sort of thing. And in my head, like, it's my ego. It's like, oh, this is cool. I'm showing somebody something. It's fun. And then I realize, the more I've gotten to know you, it's like, no, it has nothing to do with just learning one new trick. Like, you are ridiculously always got new technology, a new plugin, or something different with how you're operating. Not for the sake of a sort of shiny object syndrome. It's absolutely not that. It's literally your curiosity to learn something new or an approach of something new. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is how do you discern what information to take in and learn from or go after? Because at the moment it's like there's a million and one different ways to mix a snare drum, a million and one different plugins to make your kick drum sound big. Like, how do you filter through so much noise to decide where you place your efforts on to
uh,
develop that mixing skill set?
trial and error. I mean, that's I'm an A/B guy, so I listen to something and I compare it to something else, and if it works, then I try it again next time, and then I'll keep having that as my technique until it doesn't work, and then I might
Okay.
try it one or two more times, and if it's still not working, then it doesn't work anymore. So I'm gonna let go of that, you know. So and I learn from my friends. I learn, you know, I'll see stuff online occasionally, and like when you showed me that Dine One, until literally 2 months ago, that was on my stereo bus with your starting preset, and then I would just adjust it from there. And now I've switched to the ML4000 by McDSP,
Oh
and I
yeah.
still like the Dine One, and I might put it back on a song and get rid of the ML4000. But right now, someone said, "Hey, do you ever use the ML4000? I really like how it does such and such." And I was like, "No, I don't. Let me try it real quick." You know, I probably even have presets because I make presets for McDSP, and I go through and I mess with it, and I was like, "Yeah, this is kind of cool." And then I tried it, and now you know, 2 months later, I'm using that on every mix. But I might get bored with it, or I might be like, let me try Dine One again on Nicholas's preset. Oh yeah, that is cool. Yeah, let me get back to using this. So that's
Okay.
the way I am. I'm an A/B guy. If a new plugin comes out, a new delay, I'll try it a few times, and if it beats what I was doing before, it'll become my new thing, you know. And it's just kind of the way I operate. I don't use stuff just to use stuff or just because it's from a company. I'll try it because of that, but if it stands the test of time, then I'll keep using it. So everything I put on videos I recommend to people, whether it's hardware or software, I'm actively using, and I've used it for at least more than 2, 3 weeks, and I liked it. So if
Yeah.
it's proven itself to me from the ear test, then it's in my bag of tricks, you know.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. I'm going to try. I can't promise you to be a little bit more open minded to the AB. The AB is great. I AB whenever I'm in session, as in like level matched, very precise ABing every little element. But when it comes to plugins and tools, it's as much as the AB is important. I get so gritty into the architecture of it to understand every little thing about it. It is a time crunch, and that's where I lose my time on it because I'm like, I have to print out the manual, highlight everything, take it into Plugin Doctor, check what everything's
Oh
going,
yeah,
and then I'm
yeah,
like, and that's my version of learning something because I like to know a tool almost inside and out. So it's like breathing when I'm using it. Like, oh, I'm going to boost the
right.
low end. Yeah, I'm going to get some third order harmonics. Cool. But it's like, it's a very slow process for me. That's why I was asking you, like, you're like A, B. And I'm
Well,
like, yeah.
so you're much more informed on the tools at that point, which is very powerful because you know how it's going to react when you do something. I'm just using my ears. So if it doesn't bother me, I could be introducing harmonics that, if I knew about it technically, I might be more paranoid about doing. But if it sounds right, I just move forward. Like
Okay.
I was just told the other day that the Kirchhoff plug-in on the Lion CQ sounds better than Pro Q4, and I should start using that. That was a recommendation from one of my friends,
Okay.
and I'm like,
Interesting.
I might look into that at one point, but right now I'm going to keep using Pro Q. I just don't feel like investigating that now, but it's in the back of my mind every time I pull up a Pro Q. Should I A/B this to the Kirchhoff and see if I like the Kirchhoff better? And I know some people do, and I know I've always been a Pro Q VAP filter guy, and I'm fine with it. And but I'll A/B it, and if the Kirchhoff wins, I might start typing that in when I search plugins instead of Q4. But that's the way I operate. When someone gives me something, tells me to use something, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Well, I like what I'm using, but I'll try it, and then I might be pleasantly surprised. Like, yeah, that is better than what I'm doing, or yeah, I like what I'm doing. So just let that sit
Mm.
in the plugin folder and not get used.
All right, fair enough. And what's your plugin folder size at the moment?
Say that one more time. That plugin folder size.
Yeah, how many plugins are in there?
It's like 31 something, 3100 something. Um,
Jesus.
it's annoying. It's too many. I wish we had an unused folder, but they would still be installed because some plugins I buy because sessions have them that come in. So sometimes I get WAV files, sometimes I get sessions, and some producers will use important things that you don't want to replicate on your own without knowing what the original sounded like guitar
Yeah.
amp plugins or some sidechain LFO fancy plugin. So I'll buy it so the session has it, or either that, or if I know them really well, I'll call them and say, hey, can you commit this so I can, because I don't have that plugin or something. But I end up buying a bunch of stuff just to have it to be compatible with other people. Also, um, just to know about plugins, things that look interesting. Also, companies send me stuff, and
Yeah.
you know, but there's definitely ones that stand the test of time, and I end up using. There's probably about 60 I use regularly, and then the rest are just like, let me actively try to use something different that I haven't used in a while, and then I'll use it. Otherwise, it just sits there.
Interesting. Interesting. Cool. All right. I've got two things on the brain now that I got to take care of for myself. I got to put in. I got to actively outside because the thing is when I'm doing session work, like I am, my focus is, and I'm learning at the same time because I'm practicing quote unquote, but I'm so focused on the end goal for the producer, for the mixer, for the artist, that I'm not taking the time to use it as a learning opportunity for myself. So I got to be very conscientious of the repetitions, quote unquote, so that way I can really grow through the experiences. And the second thing is to let go a little bit with my tools and just start with the AB a little bit more, be a bit more loose and fluid with that. And maybe that could be my first active filter, is just go through the AB. And if I start liking something, then dive into it. Don't use that as my first sort of barrier because it closes so much off. Caleb's been awesome at Mixwave and he sent some cool stuff my way. And I feel so bad
Sure.
because I've not touched it. And he's such a nice dude.
Yeah,
And I've been meaning to. It's just
and
that
they're great
filter
plugins.
stops me. Yeah, and everybody raves about him, but and it kills me. Like it really does. So I need to yeah, two things for myself so far that you've taught me, and I'm like, thank you. This is really good. The last sort of thing I wanted to delve into on today's episode is basically the change in operation as a mixer. You started early thousands, but you're operating like at full scale still now in 2025. Like I know when we were in there in January, you're doing the Lupe Fiasco stuff. Like you're still moving. Like it's not stagnant. You're not on your tail. You're not on your last legs. Like you're still pumping in the studio mixing records. what has changed in 20 years? Like, what is the big shift, and what's the big shift you've seen? Like, let's say I'm fresh out of college and I'm starting now. What are you telling me? What are you doing now? How are you operating that's different?
I mean, my my only recommendation for getting gigs, and that's I think that's the advice that most young people, fresh out of school or fresh starting to be an engineer, that's their biggest question is getting gigs or having material to mix on for practice. Because some people just don't have files to practice mixing, and that is latch on to a producer so you can be his guy,
Yep.
because then you can practice mixing every single track he does, even if he hires someone else to mix. You can practice with his stuff, and you can every time you do a rough mix is a practice. I did 1,500 rough mixes with nephew as well as final mixes on the songs that got placed. So it's practice and repetition for young people, and latching on to someone that's actually doing something so that you can get a gig too. Also having a great personality, and so that likable personality, being adaptable, not saying not saying no unless you're getting abused. If people are taking
Yep.
advantage, then of course you got to stand up for yourself. But my goal in the early years was just try never to say no if I can. Whether that was asking me to do something engineering wise, or to be at some place at 3 a.m. to do something, or not taking a weekend off and working. I tried not to say no.
Yep.
Um, but as far as what's changed for me in the 20 something years is really just about how I'm mixing, and nothing with the business has changed. Everything of mine is word of mouth. Um, I still get gigs the same way, and that's either people that know I do good work and they like what I do, they like my sound, it matches their vision, and they still hire me, or those people recommend me to new people. Um, and then occasionally I'll get the people that have heard about me on Instagram or heard about me through rumors or videos or something, and they reach out blindly, without a referral or anything. Um, so that hasn't changed. I think the only thing that has changed is I don't mix in a big professional studio anymore. Like a bunch of my mix friends started mixing at home years ago or during the pandemic, and I just always wanted my fancy purpose built studio building and was paying a lot of money for it. And now I'm in my living room and I love it, and I wouldn't go back because the way things are sounding and coming out, I just really am happy with. So I did get, I did have some years where I got out of outboard gear and consoles all in the box. Then I got back into using a little bit of summing. And then I had a period where the only outboard gear I was using was vocal chains, but everything else was in the box. And now I'm back to using a lot of outboard and then doing the hybrid summing with stuff in the box. I'm also doing a lot less processing, even though I'm using all that stuff. So I have less plugins, and on those plugins, less bands of EQ. And I really worked hard on my monitoring setup to make sure I was hearing things correctly. And now things are coming out more natural, which and more true to the original thing. I just enhance it the way I hear it. But producers are more happy and artists are more happy because their stuff comes back less changed. So I definitely had some years where I was digging in so much they would get back a different feeling type record than what they gave me. And sometimes that was a great thing, and other times it was a problem, and I had to kind of steer it back towards the rough mix vibe. But now
Hmm.
I'm doing less, but the things I do are powerful. So
Hmm.
that's kind of been the change over the years, is going from only mixing on SSL consoles and room full of gear and booking the studio and having a strict time period of the day to mix, because if I go over the time, then the client has to pay more, to now, and then years of having my own studio and then being in and out of the box, and now being literally at home where I don't have to drive anywhere. I just come downstairs and start
Hmm.
mixing and take a break for dinner and take a break, watch TV with my wife, and then come back, mix some more. Um, so yeah.
No, that's really cool. Something I'm going to latch on to that you said at the start of that answer. It was all great. So I'm going to latch on to, which I think is interesting. Something you reiterate, and you've reiterated probably 3 times this episode, is for people starting out, latch on to a producer that's doing something, or that's above,
Yep.
like as in a more advanced position than you. And the key thing you said were rough mixes, because a lot of those ideas get sent off and then developed and recorded and remixed. A lot of people starting out um, need to have the humility to be able to accept that they're getting their reps in without being seen. So your skill is getting built up without the big cred or being in the studio with the artist as it's happening. It's happening on the rough mixes where you're learning, you're cutting your teeth. It's all
Yep.
behind the scenes. It's not the glory days yet until you've put the reps in, until you've got that skill, until people can see that line up, so you do get those bigger jobs.
Yeah, and eventually, doing all those rough mixes, somebody's going to realize that they don't need to go outside of you and hire someone else because now you've become good and you're delivering what your producer or artist that you're working for is wanting. So, um, take like Tizio, for example, famous engineer, came
Yep.
up with engineering for Chris Brown, had his vocals down, like knew how to record them, what Chris wanted to hear, knew how to mix them because knew what Chris wanted his vocal to sound like and the effects, and they had their system and they were a team. And fast forward to Tizio becoming a hit mixer, now when Chris does a record and TZO mixes it, I've received records where Chris Brown was a feature and his 2-track vocals already mixed by TZO. It's done. It's like you're just going to put
Yeah.
that in the song and there it is because they have their thing. And so he became valuable for Chris Brown. And when he first started, probably those mixes were going to Jason Joshua, and TZO was just the recording guy. And he just built himself up until Chris was like, I don't need to go to Jason anymore. I'm going to use you as the mixer, And now TZO has his own clients other than Chris, and he's a hit mixer now, so he's doing great. So that's how it happens. Whether it's with an artist and you're their guy recording every day, or you're with a producer and you're recording multiple artists all the time, um, and both are beneficial. When you don't have those people to work with, is when it's very hard to get gigs because you have to convince someone, unless you're getting a gig from a young producer that's just starting out. But that's not what you want. You want to work with someone that's seasoned and doing stuff so that you can be doing stuff that matters. And asking that person to stop using their trusted go-to mix engineer is almost never going to happen. It's like you got to offer to do it for free, and they still probably roll their eyes and like, yeah, but you're not going to be good even if you do it for free, you know. But
Yeah.
you got to do whatever you can. But it makes it a lot harder than if you're just the guy. I'm recording every day for you. I'm recording your beats. I'm recording your artists that you're producing, and now I'm trusted with that job. What's the next thing? Mixing. Well, I'm doing all these rough mixes, and you're starting to like them more and more as they get more and more used to you, and my skills go up. And now 2 years later, you get a shot at a mix, and you almost make it, but they still give it to the big mixer, and then you do another one, and then it's like, you're getting really good. So like that's the goal. That's how it happens.
Yeah, that's exceptional. That's exceptional advice, because a lot of people don't see into that. Like I said at the start, people look for the silver bullet. They look for, and it's just I think we live in the especially the next generation coming in is very ego driven. It's like, what can serve me now? How can I get from A to B as quick as possible? Um, and yeah, putting in those reps, and also being uh, humble enough to just be like, okay, I'm gonna be the B guy for now. I'm not gonna be the main one. I'm just gonna get my reps in, helping out,
Yep.
sweeping the floor. Like I
Uh,
remember.
I'll give a
I
second example
yeah,
just to
give a
drive it
second.
home
Yep,
and,
go.
and,
Yeah.
and prove it. Josh Goodwin. So he was Bieber's recording guy, and every time Bieber wanted to record, he had Josh Goodwin do it. Josh had a job at the record plant, and he was his engineer, and he became his go-to engineer. I heard they became friends, so like they're just like you would spending endless hours with anyone. You know, you become part of their family. You know, and then
Yeah.
that album, I forget the name of the album. It's the one with the Sorry song, the song Sorry. That album
Hmm.
drops and Josh is the mixer, and everyone's like, "Who's this guy?" And next thing you know, he's got high level management. He's getting all these great gigs, Dua Lipa, and he just rocket path. But what did he do? He did the same exact thing. He became a go to for recording, and then he got a shot at mixing. And if you become friends with an artist, no matter how famous they are, but you become their friend, their trusted comrade, and you ask them, "Hey man, can I have a shot at mixing this?" It's like they're probably not going to turn you down, especially if it's just your time involved. It doesn't affect them at all. All they got to do is listen to it and tell you if they liked it. So that's the way to do it. It's like latch on to somebody and just work. Don't look back, you know.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. It's been a really good app. It's been a really good first episode to like roll this into because I got to like I genuinely am grateful to have you on because I'm leaving this conversation with like my mind filled with new knowledge because I've finally had the time to sit down and chat with you properly and not talk your ear off about mid-side EQ on a 20-minute drive because you know
Right.
I think when it's NAM time and we're geeking out, I just go straight into the trenches. And then I'm like blinders on and I don't have the I don't have the opportunity to just like poke my head out and smell the roses a little bit and actually see what's happening around me. So this has been really special for me, Bob. I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
No, real pleasure. Look, for anybody who isn't already, go follow Bob on Instagram because sneakily he will at the most weirdest times, maybe because I'm in a different time zone,
Random.
there'll be a live
They're
stream
still they're
and
random
and
over
they'll
here, and
yeah and he'll
yeah,
be EQing some drums or zooming in on a vocal and you just see his screen and his mouse moving around and he'll be rocking up something in a session and it's worthwhile going to give him a follow at Bob Horn Mixing. Um yeah, go give him a follow, go give him some love, see what he's doing. And yeah, thank you so much, Bob. Is there anything you wanted to add before we roll off?
no, man. I'm Thanks for having me on, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Definitely. Thank you, man. All right, that's a
Yeah.
wrap.